Hello and welcome to our Early Careers webinar. Excited to see there's already people in the comments who have joined. So if you give us a little wave, let us know that you can see us, that you can hear us, that'd be great. My name is Aqua. I'm from Flexam, the Founders Associate here, and I will be the host today. And I am joined by Nick, who's from BT, Liam from Vattenfall, and we also have Becky coming from Microsoft. She's just doing a super flexible working day. There she is. And she is traveling at the moment while working. So I'll pass on to Nick to introduce yourself first.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Nick Howells and I work for BT. I've actually worked for BT for 25 years this year, and I currently work as the Talent Acquisitions Manager for BT. And all that means is that my team specifically recruit for apprenticeships, graduate schemes, and also industrial placements as well.
Amazing. And Liam?
Yes, thank you, and good to see you. And thank you also, Aqua, for having me on this call, of course. So Liam Mulder, based here in Amsterdam, work for Vattenfall as a recruitment manager, supporting an international recruitment team, and we pick up all several types of roles, starting up from early careers, traineeships, student and starters, all the way up to, let's say, professional levels, managerial, and also up to director level. So we do have quite a nice wide scope to offer.
Awesome. And you're joining us today from the Netherlands, are you?
Yes, correct. Based in today.
Awesome. And Becky?
Hello, lovely to see everybody. So Becky King, I am the UK Apprentice Lead for Microsoft. And what that means is that I work with the Microsoft business to understand where we can implement apprenticeship programs and then how we go about doing that. So right the way through working with our GTA early in profession team, and then through to our managers and the actual apprentices themselves. So great to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Great to have you guys. We have such an incredible panel today. So let's kick off and let's start by talking about what is the biggest mistake that you guys see early career candidates make in their applications. Anyone would like to go first?
Yeah, I'll jump in, and I think there's a few I could say about, but I think for me, it's actually the very first part of the application, where you get usually asked certain questions, and those questions they class as disqualifying questions. So, for example, they'll ask you, "Have you got the right qualifications?" or "Have you got X, Y, Z?" And I think sometimes that because the candidates are so eager to be able to complete their application, if you don't read that question correctly and then you may put no, it's immediately then would disqualify you. And I think sometimes it sounds so easily done, but the amount of applications that we have that have been disqualified because of just not reading the initial questions, we then go back and just call the candidate to double check, are you sure? Can I just confirm? And then, so just make absolute sure you're double checking that you're answering the initial questions correctly.
Yeah, really good point. I think in general, you get a lot of people, especially getting out of uni and stressing about a graduate job and just sending out bulk applications to everyone as well, without actually personalizing the application. And as a recruiter, you can see that they've not really put an effort into to make the application tailored to your company. They've just sent out 100 or even pressed bulk apply on job boards and things like that. So I do think that's really important, just taking the time with each application, because you're going to increase your chances of getting those interviews. Liam, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's quite similar to what you were saying, Aqua, and what we're experiencing here is at Vattenfall, we have a bit more of a traditional way of applying. We do have a couple of screening questions that candidates are able to fill in, but it's mainly also about the resume that they submit, and also with some of the questions highlighting their motivation. And what we do see in experience also with our, let's say, traineeships, which are highly popular, that by not making it personal, you're also not really able to stand out, or for us to really grasp at least to see what is it that is personal motivating you to enter in this traineeship, or what is it that engages you with our company. And I think that's also something that we're really looking out for, is that people that join our company, we have a very strong purpose towards sustainability, a greener future. that people are also able to connect to that. And we think that's truly important for us to dive into that, and that we can see it from people that they're highlighting those things. So I always say to them, make sure to highlight 1 or 2 things in your resume, or maybe by submitting a little motivation that really pops out, basically, in that sense, to stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, 100%. And it works both ways, right? You shouldn't necessarily be applying to just any company left, right, and center that you just think might be a good fit. It's also about fitting in within the company, if you actually care about what they do, for what their initiatives are and things like that. And then that makes you stand out in the application because you genuinely care and want to work at that company, not just do that job. And it also makes you a better fit within the team, and that's also something that obviously recruiters look out for. Becky, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, probably just one thing that I've seen arise over probably the last 2 years. So the way Microsoft goes to market for its apprenticeship programs, so that we're very specific on the location, so whether that's London or Reading, but we always talk about hybrid working and the flexibility. And so what I've seen a rising trend at is, in an application, we're really clear, like we coach constantly through the process in terms of, so if you've met the eligibility criteria, then move on to the next step. We come back to that relocation question. So if you're living in Leeds and the job is in Reading, like we really support what that actually means. So can you come to the office like every day? Because if you're needed, that's what it means. So I guess it's not a mistake, but always just think about location. When it's talking about hybrid, really understand what that means. Because when you get offered, so say you've been super successful through the process and you get offered, and then you turn around going, no, I can't relocate, or no, actually, I can't be. That just feels, it's a feeling thing for me. It feels really like we've coached you through this.
Yeah.
But yet we've come to this. So it's just something to watch out at, I think, for me, as we come into this kind of back to the office, more hybrid world. Just think about where you want to be for those roles.
Yeah, 100%. And it wastes time on both sides, right? If it's not a fit location wise.
Yeah.
And we say this all the time at Flex as well. Hybrid can mean so many things to different companies. And it's really clear about, both from a company perspective, it's clear about what hybrid means for you so that you attract the right type of candidates, but also from a candidate perspective that you know what's even possible for you, you know, in a commute sense. Out of curiosity, in Microsoft, what does hybrid mean to you? And also, is there a difference between the type of hybrid you offer to early careers compared to maybe more senior leadership teams?
No, so we have a rule that makes us sound really authoritarian. We have a policy. I should do know this because I am in HR. So we have a policy that we think about hybrid working for you and the team, right? So it can be anywhere from 100% remote to 50% to 60% in the office. So that applies to all of our workforce, like flexibility, agreed with the manager, etc. But where we lean in and coach really hard with our early in professions is that don't miss out on that opportunity of being in the office at the start of your career. Like, I'm an old dinosaur. I've been around for years. That networking and being in the office, like I've done that and I'm at a different part of my career. But missing out on that face-to-face when they're first starting out, we really kind of advocate. And then as they get further into their programs and life with Microsoft, they start to understand how to do flexible working. Because actually, from a mental health perspective, well-being, being in your room all the time and just not seeing people is also not great. But that early stages, advocate for in-person, sort of 2 to 3 days a week. And then you work it out with your team and your manager, what that looks like.
Yeah, I've definitely seen both sides of it. There are people who are very strongly on, if you're early careers, you need to be in the office a lot more. If you're already more senior in a career, it's not as much of an importance on where you work. But then some people say it should be completely as equal and the opportunities are not less. You're not missing out on anything. I'd love to hear your guys' perspective, Nick and Liam, on this, and also how you approach it in your company.
Yeah. Maybe to take, I think ours, or at least also my vision, is quite similar to Becky's, where I had a hybrid way of working. We don't do fully remote, but we always encourage that there is a certain agreement between the employee and the manager to make sure it suits them as well, because everybody has a different approach, like you said, to hybrid. but it's about making sure that there's a good and clear understanding from each other, and that we also know what's going to be expected in that form. Because I also believe that that hybrid way of working also means that we as an employer can ask something from you when it requires, such as Becky, to travel maybe around countries or across the country. That we should also understand when the employee needs the time to be at home to maybe complete some work or to work on a difficult task, that they can do that at peace at home. Regarding, and I think that's a very important part, the mental health aspect for the early careers. Go to the office indeed, hang around the people, get a good feeling of the culture, try to socialize in that part. And I think it's also for the people at an early career trying to figure out what does it mean to have this full working week, getting a full pay, having that responsibility. I think that's also something that they need to figure out a bit, and I think we as companies should also give them that room and space, because it does take time to get that grasp of it. And I think that's I really like that part what you were mentioning, Becky, about that mental health piece. Just being stuck in a room, I think that's not just it. It maybe seems great that you're able to be at home and do the work from home, but I think at the end of the day, it's not something that will benefit you in the long run.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Nick, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just seeing what Sabrina has wrote, and I was I think for BT, we have a policy. It's very clear that everyone that works within BT that is not a home worker, we work 3 together, 2 wherever. So hybrid working, so 3 days a week we're in within the office. We work collaboratively, and then we have 2 days a week where you can then work in your home, work in Costa Coffee, wherever you want to work, which better suits in your environment. But of course, we do have to look at people's well-being and people's circumstances. So we have what we call adjustment passports. So if somebody isn't able to commit for whatever reason for 3 days in the office, we will look at everyone's personal circumstances.
Yeah, I love that. 3 together, 2 wherever. That's the first time I hear that. Really cool.
Maybe to add maybe shortly, and I think it's also a bit of a tip, like a lot of these teams, they have fixed days where they all come into the office. And I think for an early career to check that, maybe with the hiring manager or with the HR responsible person to like, hey, what are the days that we are all coming to the office? We were just discussing it as well, like the Friday afternoon drinks, they happen nowadays on Thursdays because Fridays is usually a day working from home. So that's also a bit of the change that has happened during these years.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. I mean, if you're going to go into the office, you might as well make the most of it. And actually, especially if you're early careers, make sure that you're in the office at the same time as your mentors and you're getting the most out of it that you can, and not just showing your face just to go into the office. Amazing. So let's move on, kind of still the initial stage of the applications, but when you're looking at candidate CVs, beyond technical skills, what are the soft skills that you most value in early careers? Because they might not still have loads of work experience or kind of something achievements to show. So what would be kind of the soft skills that you're looking out for in CVs? Let's go to Liam.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I think it differs a bit per job that I would be looking out for. I think what I would love to see, and it's once again a bit more about that personal notes, if they're able to translate some of the soft skills that they've gained maybe during their education, studies. Just for an example, somebody that has been, I don't know, like a football coach, and they're also trying to aspire to become a certain project lead or project coordinator where they're able to stand in front of a crowd. Like that's something that I would love to see then. Like that's a certain skill that you, although you don't really have the direct working experience yet, it is something you could mirror head towards. And that's something that I would, let's say, really value in seeing at that early stage.
Yeah, definitely. And Nick?
So within BT Early Careers, we made the decision a couple of years ago, we don't ask for CVs. The reason why we don't ask for CVs is because we don't expect people to have experience. And we know that with AI, ChatGPT, that a CV is not really your authentic self. And someone, you could have a perception of somebody based on their CV without seeing that person. it could be somebody completely different to who we are looking for. So we skip that stage. And we directly go to the online assessment, so cognitive and behavioural. So we do have a kind of sifting process where we just check your kind of behavioural skills. But more importantly for us, it's looking at then their motivation to work for BT. So we have telephone interviews, telephone chats. A lot of our work goes into actually physically picking up the phone and calling the candidates to say, so tell me about yourself. Why BT? And I think we said before, Aqua, we were talking about how important it is to read up about that particular company that you're applying for, because it's about what you can bring to that role. So the skills for me, it's that resilience and passion for that particular role that you're applying for.
That's a really interesting perspective on not taking CVs at all from early careers. Completely makes sense, because yes, I agree. Most of these are just fresh out of uni, not necessarily, even if they do have work experience, it's not as relevant because they might have had, just bar jobs or worked in retail. But these tests that you guys do, the cognitive kind of tests, are they the same across all jobs, or do they differ depending on what they're applying for?
Yep, so different depending on apprenticeships. So obviously apprenticeships straight out of school, graduates, different level, because they may have more experience, life experience than apprenticeships. So we tailor the questions depending on the level of the role that they're applying for.
Interesting. And sorry, Liam, did you want to say something?
No, just thinking about interesting, because it's something that we've also been, let's say, furthermore looking into, especially where we have some of these traineeships, thousands of applicants per position, right? And then it's very also hard for us to shift between one CV, reading the other one, reading the other one, and where we're also really looking into that part on putting more of an assessment tool in it at that first stage, rather than just reading through the CV and then going to an assessment.
Yeah.
So just interesting hearing that, Nick.
Yeah.
And Becky, tell us about what the approach is at Microsoft.
So I've just moved. There was a road sweeper going by, which was very loud. So I'm +1 on Nick there. We don't screen on CVs for the apprenticeship program. It's an application. We look for potential. So that is there's sort of 5 core Microsoft strengths that you need to have around resilience, learning agility, etc., etc. And it's this really fine balance in the world of work at the moment when I think about how we're looking, attracting and sourcing talent, that those soft skills are now kind of like part of the package of the most important skills. So when you're thinking about how work's going to change with AI, so that ability to communicate, be the human in the process, actually that they become really a standard set of skills. They're not just soft. I hate the word soft, but it's like they're kind of like your passport skills to be able to work, because they are so uber important, and they're going to get more important. And that an analytical mindset, the kind of storytelling, etc., etc. I think it's ever evolving, but it's exciting that those soft skills kind of move into that more, opens up more opportunity for more people. But yes, we do obviously look for those types of skills, and then we always say that we can train people in the rest. So +1 to you, Nick, on the no CVs. It annoys my managers a lot, but you know what? Got to do something different sometimes.
Absolutely.
I love that, especially, I mean, as you mentioned, with AI, like most of the CVs now written, I would argue, are probably, or at least checked by AI. So you're not necessarily, and to be honest, I've always been in the stance that writing a CV is also a skill. And not all people have that skill. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're bad at your job. It just means you're not great at putting your achievements on paper. And that might in some scenarios, maybe that is a skill that's needed in the job. But in most scenarios, it might completely be irrelevant. And it's kind of taking the human approach to giving people a chance, rather than just looking at a piece of paper and saying, oh, well, they don't particularly meet the criteria that I've set out. So moving on to the actual interview stage, I'd love to hear from you guys. What to you makes a candidate memorable in an interview? What makes them stand out? Would anyone like to go first?
Shall I go? I'll go quickly first. Just get my rantings out of the way, I think, more than anything else. What makes a candidate? Do you know, I have the joy and pleasure of looking at some of our first round video. We do a video interview process to then final virtual interview. So no group assessments. It's quite a slick process, actually. Of course, there are things that you can learn from and make better, but the ones that really stand out for me is when I'm doing that kind of benchmarking with the team that we work with and they're talking about how they've been involved in something at Microsoft. So they've taken an opportunity to work with one of our employee resource groups, and they are absolutely nailing every bit of mentoring and coaching from that they've had. And that's not about a privilege thing. That's like lots of different employee resource groups going in, because we really want to attract a really diverse set of talents to Microsoft. And they want it. The energy's there. You can feel them kind of sizzling away. That's always just really stands out for me.
And just the fact that they actually want to work at Microsoft, not just have a job somewhere, like they actually care about the company, which obviously always goes a long way.
Yeah, exactly. I'll leave the others to come back now with their answer.
I'm kind of linking in what Becky've actually said is when you're thinking about somebody who's memorable. For us, we've changed. We were having a video assessment. So it was a video assessment where they would record themselves and they would record their answers. And then they would be invited to a virtual assessment centre. And that was the final part. And what we decided last year was then to change it so they have a telephone interview instead of a video interview. And the reason being was because we realized that when they were videoing themselves, one, they were coming across as robotic. It is very hard to try to video yourself in one take. And also you could tell they were just reading from ChatGPT. It wasn't their authentic self. So now it's over telephone, so we can ask them, probe them, not just, we can find out what they would say there and then instead of trying to think about the answer. But also, if they do just say a one-word answer, we can really help them in trying to draw out more of a conversation. So if I could think about memorable, for me, it's making sure that you are not Googling common, typical answers that you think that the hiring manager, the interviewer, is expecting to hear. They want to hear about you, your skills, what you've done within, and why you're passionate about BT, and what is it that you're looking forward to doing within that program or within that apprenticeship. Just try not, and I know it's so hard to prep those generic answers because everyone's heard it a million times.
Yeah, that's so spot on. I thought it would be a big difference in the answers, obviously, from your guys' big companies and then me working in the startup world. But I think it's so important to just show a bit of you as well. I think, especially when I was young, probably very big lack of confidence when speaking to what seems like, someone who can give you this amazing job and you're like really stressed, and you're just giving them the answers that you think they expect to hear and they want to hear. But honestly, like, especially towards the end stages of the interviews, I think when you've narrowed it down to say 5-10 people, all those people can do that job. You're now looking who's going to fit the team best as well. So I think showing a bit of personality and being confident goes a long way as well in those interviews. And Liam?
Yeah, I think what we were just saying as well about like writing a resume being a skill, and I think having a good interview, or as a candidate doing a good interview, is also quite of a skill. And like Nick said, I think us as companies, we should also provide a good platform in terms of I have to wave. Provide a good platform in terms of having that interview, right? And having that conversation about who that person is, what motivates them, what drives them. And that in those parts where some people are maybe very good at interviewing because they have maybe a bit more of a commercial or maybe a recruiting background, opposed to maybe somebody working in IT who has different skills, but meaning that we as a company, like Nick also said, we have to drive them a bit more to get maybe the answers that we're looking out for, because the answer is in there. We know that that could do the job. And ultimately, I think it's also really important that we allow them to be themselves, right? We're looking to see the true selves rather than putting up that act, potentially what you're saying, or that they're just saying what they think they need to say. And about making it more memorable, and it's the word sometimes I usually like to call it, let's say it's a two-way street interview, because it's also for the candidate to evaluate us as an employer, like, hey, is this an employer that I would like to work for? So I would say the most memorable interviews that I usually have is that the candidate is also assessing us a little bit more about, hey, what is the manager like, or hey, how does the team look like, and talking about the best for the team. And I think we're also in terms of D&I, where we're talking about what culture can they add in terms of fitting into the culture, but what culture can they add? So we're also looking at that part, like, hey, what can they truly add to the team and to the organization?
Yeah, 100%. I love the language that you guys all used, where it's almost a collaborative process in interview. You all mentioned things like supporting the candidates during the interview and kind of even helping them draw the answers. Because when I think back to starting my career and having to interview for actual roles in a career that I wanted to go into, it is scary and it is daunting, especially the first few interviews. You feel like you don't know what you're going to say. You research so much, almost too much, that you become robotic because you feel like, oh, I need to say this, I need to say this. But I love the fact that you guys say, we're here to also help you, and we also want you to ask us questions. It is a two-way street. That's so such a good point. I'd love to hear, Nick, you mentioned that you've changed from the video to now a phone interview. Do you think it makes a big difference not, I guess, intimidating these early career candidates and being on camera during an interview and just having a phone call, which maybe seems a little bit less pressure than getting on a video call with someone?
I think so. And I think everyone, we tested and spoke to the current grads and apprentices and said, tell us about your journey, that your experience when we hired you, what would you change? What do you feel you'd be more comfortable in? And that's from their feedback. We've then decided to remove the video interview and have the telephone interview. Like you said, you're not feeling that you have to dress up, or should I wear this or should I wear that, or people have a different perception of what you should wear to work. So that worry is gone. You don't have to, perception have be on video, but also I think, like I said before, it's more about if someone is really, really nervous, and they, especially apprenticeship age, the typical apprenticeship age, when they give a one-word answer, we can really help them and say, tell me more then. So, and I've said about hobbies, it's so important to ask them about their hobbies because it's relatable. So they may not feel, if someone who said to somebody, tell me a time you've been resilient, they'll probably freeze up and think, oh, I don't know, I've never done anything. But if you find out then what they do within their personal life, yes, they've done it. It's just helping and probing them to get that answer out of them. So I feel it's made a difference already, this year with the candidates.
Definitely. It's relating, right, to experiences you've had that you might not necessarily think are related to the role because it was in your personal life, but it still is, especially skills-wise.
Yeah.
I actually spoke to one of our founders today, and I said, what makes a candidate memorable for you? And he said, these when they show achievements rather than what their experience. And I said, but early careers, people might not have achievements. And he said, no, they still do. It can be, uni clubs, it can be their hobbies, it can be something personal, but just showing that you've actually done something, achieved something that you're proud of, not necessarily in like a previous role, it still goes a long way.
Yeah, 100%.
Amazing. So I would love to move on kind of to when candidates already hopefully get the role. And what kind of behaviors that you noticed that separate high-performing early career employees from those who might not be as high-performing?
I can start with, do you want me to start? Shall I go
Yeah.
again? Here we go. And Nick, love to learn some more about that approach with BT as well, just on that video interview. So let's make sure we
Yeah.
pick up.
Definitely.
I think I've been in the role of like program managing and then leading for sort of 16 years with apprenticeships, and the route has changed significantly in that period of time. Lives have changed, generations have changed, and actually what I tend to see now is more support from that bridge from education to employment. I think Microsoft, you never underestimate it, but you're almost kind of like that bridge has got longer and it's got bigger over the past few years for many different reasons. And it's so sad in terms of COVID and the impact that young people have had on their lives to get them to where they need to be now. So there's a lot more care needed in that first kind of introduction into work and setting expectations. I saw that there was a thing about being clear. Somebody was talking about job interviews and job postings. Clarity, super important, but in a different way.
Mhm.
High performing isn't about, it's about losing almost that, what you tend to find with really high achieving school leavers and that exam success. It's almost like that's got to drop to be able to become open and vulnerable to experiences, to be able to fail, that resilience, to pick yourself up, to keep learning. And that all high performing apprentices at Microsoft have that kind of ching moment at 6 months when it all kind of comes together and they go, I need to not be that, and I'm learning to be this. But you know what, it's just a different world for them right now. So I've noticed changes in the last 16 years, and high performing also means that you could be juggling with caring at home, you could be managing your family, you could be the sole breadwinner. So it's all being about inclusive to many different people's circumstances, because equally they all bring something different, but they're high performing. Does that make sense? I've rambled.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love that you touched on inclusivity as well. I think you're very right in saying that it is a big change when you go from university to like actually building a career in your first kind of job where you have to learn so much, but also bring a lot of yourself and a lot of good work to the company. It's kind of a bit of a shock, because what you learn in university, it's all theoretical, and then you have to actually go into like practical, and it is a big change. I think one of the biggest ones that I would maybe say would be proactivity, because you get a lot of not just early careers people or students. I think in general proactivity is a big skill that you get the people who are great at their job and they're brilliant at what they do, and they do their job and they log off and they're happy and that's done. And you get people who are constantly wanting to learn more, to especially in early careers. I think that's a big differentiator in performers is the proactivity, asking more questions, constantly wanting to learn new skills, speaking to maybe even people in other departments, and just being curious and interested. Makes a big difference. Nick or Liam?
Yeah. I was quite on that same line as you were, Aqua, and I think it's about also the ability to connect with the people around you, to have that just very, like you said, being curious about things, and talking about being open, vulnerable, questioning things like, okay, I don't understand, can you explain? Just be open about it. It's not weird if you don't understand something straight from the bat. So, and I think also what people do need to realize, and also when you just start in your early career, it doesn't mean you're going to do this job for 40 years. It doesn't. It's okay if this turns out after 6 months or a year that this is not for you. That's okay, right? There are many jobs as well then eventually to figure out. But I think don't eventually just sit there and get yourself maybe a bit miserable, or where you're not feeling well. It's then also about then keep on moving, try to look around, build up that network. I think that's something that I've seen also happening here at Vattenfall, where people are able to build up the network, being curious. We promote quite a lot of internal mobility. I think that ticks quite well in that sense.
Mm-hmm. I think I love that you say, about the asking questions and the ask why a lot. When I remember when I was doing a placement, I was still in university, but doing a professional placement, I felt like I went back to that age between like 5 and 10 years old, where why everything, why, and it's not necessarily coming from a bad place, but I know my mentor was probably very frustrated with me, but I just needed to understand everything kind of, and there was obviously so much to learn that everything was why, and I just felt like I went back to that kid stage of I just need to justify everything I'm doing. But I think 100% asking those questions, being curious, and as you say, connecting with people. At the end of the day, it's your network is also really important, especially in your early career. So Becky, you mentioned now at your stage, maybe you don't need it as much as the early careers do, but that's again the point of having hybrid roles and really making sure that that's very clear where you stand, and when people go into the office, so you can have that one-to-one time, especially with those people who are training you. Nick, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely on the same basis of the resilience and definitely networking and making sure that you get the best out of your apprenticeship and the best out of a grad scheme or internship. But I think for us, we're really passionate about the candidates that are naturally quiet and naturally shy, and struggle with being able to demonstrate their abilities, because a lot of people say, the loudest person in the room is not always the strongest. So what we always say is, take the opportunities, but a lot of candidates or apprentices, when they start, don't know how. So then it's taking the opportunities. For example, I emailed a lot of apprentices this week and said, I'm in Manchester next week. I've got 2 careers fairs. I'd love for people to join me, because I really want apprentices with me to share the opportunities and the roles. So I had a lot of people coming back saying, yes, great. So they reply on an email, whereas they wouldn't necessarily get themselves out there. And it's just taking the opportunity that as much as you can to then network and to actually show what you can, your authentic self and what you can be like within that role.
Yeah, oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I think especially since this kind of last 3-4 years, people even in universities had to do a lot of things remote. I think there's a lot of keenness now for going into in-person events and making those connections and networking in person, because definitely missed out on a lot of that during the pandemic. What emerging skills should early career candidates focus on developing if they're kind of in university right now and thinking about their first step in their career? What do you think would be the best skills to focus on?
Yeah, it's when I think when we're talking about development, I always sometimes, when I was, let's say, starting my career, it was always about your weaknesses, to develop your weaknesses and get those better. But I think it's also about people determining what their strengths are and to really try to develop those strengths. So if you discover you're just very good at presenting, then do something with presenting, or try to get better at presenting. And because some people, like we said, are just a little bit more shyer, or they don't really love to communicate in this open type style, then try to focus on something else that suits you better. And I think that's also important. Like, don't think what is going to be expected of you that you should develop that skill, but really do something that you enjoy and get better at it. That to make it a bit more of your unique traits. And I think that could be different for everyone. And I think the buzzword, what everybody's saying, is AI. I think we're getting crazy of that word. I think that's a certain emerging skill that people need to learn or do about, or see how they can implement it in their work. Something with AI is then maybe one of the buzzwords to put in there.
I used to absolutely hate in interviews the question of what is your biggest weakness, because you also don't particularly want to give it away if you're like absolutely horrible at something and you want them to give you the job. And it's such a stressful question, I think. But I love the fact that you said, focus on actually strengthening the things that you're good at, not necessarily fixing your weaknesses, because some things you might just never be good at. And again, maybe says you shouldn't be going for jobs that require that skill. But especially if you're growing the skills in the area that you love, doesn't feel like work, does it? So yeah, definitely focusing, I agree, on growing the skills in the areas that you actually enjoy doing and that you have a knack for. Becky?
Liam, I'm going to say AI. No, I'm joking. Listen, like, in all seriousness, we're at that kind of point of quite a different world of work starting to emerge and appear, jobs we don't know about, etc. And we all know that. But I think what I'm sort of seeing as a superpower, and I see it, like our 4-month-in apprentices have already started creating co-pilot agents to change the way that more experienced staff do processes and things like that, because they bring this amazing different perspective and can just pick up our tech and run with it. So that is, and when we talk about AI skills, Liam, I think it's really key that we're quite defined about what that means. So I'd really encourage everybody on the phone, I'm obviously on the phone, but on the thing, to go and have a look at the Turing Institute. And Aqua, maybe I can send you that link, but it defines AI worker skills that everybody should have really, really super well, in terms of like keeping yourself safe, understanding data, etc. It's just something that you are, as a community, our early and career communities are so, it's going to be natural to them to be able to do, but just it's going to be your new superpower as you enter work. So it's there, it's exciting, and I love seeing what apprentices and early in careers can do with it, because it teaches me, and that's their giving back. As I'm getting older, they can teach me new ways of doing things as well. But AI is there as a skill, as well as that human storytelling, what's the data telling you, etc. So that would be my kind of 2 pennies on that piece.
Becky, do you use AI in your job?
Yes. I love to think like I'm like one of our kind of deep technical people, but yes, I do. Like, I couldn't do without Copilot now to help me write emails. I'm sounding like an advert for Microsoft. Clearly I'm not. But just taking some of the mundane away from me, yes, it's changed part of my job, which I adore, because it gives me more time to do strategy and crazy thinking.
Yeah, 100%. I do definitely think there's a lot of the nitty gritty that we used to spend hours on that AI now kind of takes away from us, that we can actually use that time much better. But it's also, I think, in terms of like using AI as a skill, the way I would understand it is as well, just knowing how to use AI, like how to talk to it, because I think you can tell a big difference when somebody uses ChatGPT or whatever they use and they write some copy, and then somebody who actually knows how to do the prompt and things like that, knows how to talk to it, then it comes out with copy that you can't really tell has been written by AI. And I've noticed that difference a lot, especially in like CVs and cover letters and things like that. Nick, what skill would you say?
I'm going to talk specifically about BT again, because I think for us as a company, we're transitioning from a telecommunications company to a tech company. So everybody, I think the perception of BT is kind of landlines, Bob Hoskins in the day, you know, where it's good to talk. And I think it was such a advertisement over the years was so good. Unfortunately, it's hard to get away from people still thinking of BT like that. So you know, it's completely evolved, and now, you know, if we have emergency services, we're a massive part of the NHS and emergency services network. Drones, you know, supporting, you know, new technologies, robots. We're looking at teleporting. You know, it's unbelievable what the projects that we do. So for us, it's definitely, you know, the skills. I know we said AI, but it's huge. But also, you know, kind of software engineering, data analytics. Those are the roles that we absolutely future, kind of 5 years forward thinking. Those are the type of skills that we're looking for. We know sustainability is going to be huge for a very well, for forever. So it's looking at who's passionate about creating, you know, creativity and sustainability as well. So I would absolutely be, if I was still, you know, back in education, I would be looking at those different topics and qualifications.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned data in there as well. Do you think understanding data and being able to use data is also an important skill in early careers nowadays?
Yes, and also I think typically a lot of the technology and the skills and qualifications are historically male orientated, and now it's not. You have a lot of females now are really interested and passionate, but there's still a massive gap where you only see a very, very small percentage of females applying for those type of roles. So, data is huge. Without understanding the data in the background, you're not knowing then what your objectives and strategies need to be. So yeah, they're very important.
100%. I would love to quickly run through one last question before we get to the audience questions. So while we're talking about this, if you guys want to pop in any questions, whether that's specifically to someone or just all of us, feel free to do so in the chat. I'd love to hear a little bit about the initiatives that you guys have at BT, at Microsoft, at Vattenfall to support early career talent, because I know, Liam, you mentioned you've recently launched or about to launch a new program as well. So tell us a little bit about what that looks like, how people can find out more about it, and then we'll head to Becky and Nick after as well.
Yeah, thanks. And to be honest, it has been quite of an established program already. We call it the Vattenfall International Traineeship Program. And basically every 6 months we start with that program. Around 20 to 25 people can start. It's a 12-month program, and it basically allows these early career starters to start within a certain department, really get to know the company. So they will be traveling around the different, let's say, offices, visiting certain sites. So we do a lot with energy, going to, basically every little nitty-gritty thing within the organization that they're able to see and discover about the organization. And they really team up together as well. So it's also about really taking those first steps in their career together. And I think the really cool thing is, and this is also once again about that networking part, is that they will go on a job rotation internally twice, and preferably also across borders. So, for example, somebody starting here in the Netherlands, they will go out to London for an assignment for 6 to 8 weeks, and then also really gain that experience. So I would say it's really a very challenging traineeship that we are able to offer. But it's also a very one that can accelerate the careers of these early career starters. And let's say for the rest, we do a lot on terms of student workers, also, let's say, related to career events. We're also giving advice in terms of how to write an application, or how to dress up your CV and make it sure that it is noticeable. And it's a bit different per country, where we also run apprenticeship programs. Maybe when I'm ranting on a bit, but I think one thing really noticeable to mention is also something that we do in the UK is, as we're building offshore wind farms and also onshore wind farms, we also want to give back to the community. And so that's also where we, let's say, with local communities, schools, councils, where we're able to provide, let's say, more apprenticeships, local apprenticeships, or something that we're looking out for. Also in Wales, we have a very nice wind farm, Pinnigamoith, where we also have every year we have let's say, an apprentice who will start a 12-month traineeship. And I think those are usually the really cool things that we're able to do to also really give back to the local community with our apprenticeships.
Amazing. It sounds very hands-on and very just thrown into it.
Yeah, that's I think I'm quite jealous of these guys and girls that are able to do it. Yeah,
I was gonna say, even it sounds great to me, and I don't have anything to offer to the company, but that sounds amazing.
You definitely would.
Becky, tell us about the Microsoft initiative.
So I think a really good plug for me for Microsoft would be the online free AI skills training. So thinking about data safety, employability skills using AI as well. So what I'm going to do is, after, I'm going to send you the links to that so that everybody can access it. We've got a hub and a portal. I think everybody should have that opportunity to just understand, because we know from our research that an early in profession, or we call them early in profession at Microsoft, so an early in career would join the workforce, and if they've got access to a co-pilot or AI, their knowledge level is lifted by about 65%. So imagine just having that. Like, if you could be 65% more knowledgeable because you've got AI, what does that mean? Acceleration. There's all sorts of context that needs to go around that in just in learning how to apply it, etc., in years trod. But it's a really attractive skill for employers now to say that you have AI, because it is a hard skill. We've still got a huge skill gap over it. So I would encourage everybody to go and have a look, at least go and have a play. I did Python coding in Excel the other day. I haven't got GCSE maths. So let's just take that in.
I need to check that out myself. Yes, please share, and I will share with the attendees as well
Thank
today.
you. Thank you.
And Nick, what about Betty?
Yeah, so we have industrial placements, which for us, so having the industrial placement, which is typically you take you're in university obviously, and you have that year gap where you then come to BT for a year, learn more about the program that you're specifically studying in, and then for us is we are giving you the experience to then go back to university for your final year, and then for us, we build in that pipeline for the future talent for our grads. So we are helping and supporting growing them. They go off, we let them go, kind of grow even further for that extra year, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, they come back to us then as our talent pool for grads. We also, for internally, once we have the grads and apprentices that join us, we have a lot of mentor schemes. Every single grad and apprentice has a mentor, and we have rotational programs. So especially where a lot of candidates join us, they decide on a program, but who really wants to know what they want to do in life? So we try as much as we can to carousel, as we call it, a rotational program. So they spend 3 months in different departments learning, and hopefully by the end of it, they're like, yes, I really, really know what I want to do now in BT. And then we offer them, a position specific to that particular program. But our networks are huge as well. So, if you were to help and support growth mindset, ABLE network, disability networks, pride networks, religious networks, we have a kind of a well-being network. So to be able to help and support that apprentice or grad to grow and flourish, we kind of give them as many kind of initiatives as possible for them to be able to feel supported.
That's amazing. I love the rotation element. I know, Liam, you mentioned it as well.
Yeah.
Myself, when I was doing my placement year, they rotated me through every department possible. The dangers with that is I like doing all of them and chose one. And so I became a generalist and just do all of them. But I think it's really good for people because, as you say, like it's so hard to know what you actually want to do. And especially if you're doing quite a broad degree, like business or, something that involves a lot of different jobs that you could potentially do. It is really hard to know what career to go into until you've actually tried doing it day to day. So it's amazing that you guys offer that opportunity, I think. Awesome. So let's go through a couple of attendee questions. There's a few good ones here. I think let's start with this one. What is some advice on dealing with rejection from a role that you really wanted? Would anyone like to go?
I could take this one if it's okay. I think for me, it's so important on how you react to rejection, because we unfortunately you do have candidates replying very annoyed or angry, I'm the right person for the job, it should have been me, and absolutely, you have the right to feel like that. But for me, to be able to deal with rejection is, no matter how you're feeling at that time, is to ask for feedback and ask for specific feedback on how you can then add to your personal development plan, and then develop and grow that feedback, the skills, the gaps, wherever it was from that interview, is, thank someone for their time, and but say that you're really passionate in getting it right and getting the job if another opportunity comes up, because usually that means then that I would remember that person, and if then another role comes up in that area, then obviously you're more likely to think, oh, yeah, that person, they were really great, they were just off the mark, let's contact them, let's see if they're able to, kind of have another interview. So definitely just get the feedback.
That's spot on, and never close a door, and especially angry. It's we see this a lot. I mean, in Flexa, there's been a few of us, myself included. I first applied like a year before I actually got my role. just wasn't the right fit then, but
Mm.
obviously kept in touch. And especially if
Yeah.
you really do want to work for that company, never close the door, because opportunities will keep coming. Obviously, new roles will be posted, and the impression that you make, I think, especially when you don't necessarily get a role, does make a lasting impression on the recruiter. We've got one question here that a lot of people like, and I also would love to hear your thoughts, guys. How would you support someone early in a new career, someone who's perhaps been in the workforce for a while but has decided to shift careers? Would you take a different approach than you would with a younger candidate?
Interesting question. Thinking about it.
I'll jump in if that's okay. Just when
Yeah.
Liam's thinking about it. So for me, it's that individual person that you would find out what's their best learning style and how you get the best out of them. So it doesn't, I suppose, matter whether it's age or ability. For me, you would look at that particular person. So if they look at to shift careers, what specific support is it that we need to tailor for that person? So, are they a visual person? Are they more auditory person? Do we need to give them adjustments? So whether the adjustments is giving them more time, or whether it's just giving them more extra support in a certain subject. So I think for me, it's not just the age, it's anyone that's decided to shift careers. It's tailoring the support to that person.
Liam, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and I think also when people, they should be able to, or at least how I see it, also be able to explain why they're maybe looking to make that career change or move, and what they would potentially be able then to bring into another position or another role. Or I think that should also be quite important, at least for me to know as a recruiter, where I would be like, okay, but why then taking this step, or what are you looking to achieve or looking to learn? And just as Nick said as well, like, how can we then as an employer facilitate you in that? To at least give that candidate, how can I say it? To not set them up for failure, but to really enable them to get successful in the job that we're potentially looking to hire them for.
Yeah, definitely. And you wouldn't necessarily disregard someone who's switching careers in regards to someone who's just come out of university, for example.
No.
Would you give them the same chance?
Yeah.
Amazing. That's good to know. I see there was another comment made saying there's so many opportunities for young people, but not necessarily for people switching careers. So it's good to know that these are still opportunities that are obviously available to people early in that career, not necessarily early in their career.
Yeah, absolutely. Any age, it's just usually it's obviously coming up to school or college, but it's an amazing opportunity for someone that wants to completely change, what their career path. And it's any age that anyone can apply.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. We've run out of time. We still have a few questions, but if any of our audience want to reach out to any of the speakers or myself, feel free to get in touch with us on LinkedIn. We'll also email you guys the resources available. And thank you so much, guys, for joining us today. It was a brilliant discussion.